Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Jesse Forrester. I am your host for the hashtag Find the Pioneer series. Here we talk about finding incredible people that are making a change and impact in the world of sustainability. And it is my pleasure to speak to various guests that make a change and actually inspire me as I speak to them to do more and be more. The hashtag Find the Pioneer series is brought to you by the Zayed Sustainability Prize. We are currently looking for pioneers. So please nominate any pioneer, someone who's doing something great for their community, and leave a link or a message at info@zayedsustainabilityprize.com. Today we have an amazing guest with us, Mr. Bertrand Piccard. He is someone I just came to find out about recently and was blown away. He is an explorer for sustainability and one of the world's leading advocates for sustainable transport and environmental protection. Mr. Bertrand Piccard, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Awesome. So let's get to it, Mr. Piccard. You are the first person to famously circumnavigate the Earth in a non-stop hot air balloon in 1999. Fun fact, that's when I was born. Flying more than 45,000 kilometers in 20 days. This was then followed by the first solar round-the-world flight on board the Solar Impulse plane in 2015 and 2016. Can you tell our audience about these pioneering accomplishments and how they impacted your leadership in sustainable transport since then?
Yes, my goal is always to be useful. So at the end of the flight around the world with the balloon, 20 days, 45,000 kilometers with the Breitling Orbiter 3 balloon, there was 40 kilos of propane gas, of fuel, that was left out of the 3,700 kilos from the start. Yeah. So when you say the sky is the limit, it's wrong. You should say the fuel is the limit. And we could not go further. We were successful, but I had this vision that if you want to do more, if you want to do better, you have to get rid of the fuel. And that was the dream of Solar Impulse. Having a solar-powered airplane that would fly just with the energy of the sun, running electric motors and charging batteries during the day. So you can spend the night in the air and day after night after day, stay airborne as long as you want. And this was for me really the way of showing that clean technologies and renewable energies can achieve the impossible.
Wow, that's amazing. I think the way you put it in the videos before was a limiting factor, kind of realizing that if you cut out fuel, you can stay in the sky forever. So as a founder of Solar Impulse, which you just mentioned, tell us about your approach to clean economic growth, which would offer us prosperity, but in a sustainable manner that protects the environment and improves the quality of lives.
Yes, today we have to see that in the past, I think we have promoted protection of the environment in a wrong way. We have told people it's going to be expensive. You will need to spend a lot of money to protect the environment. You will need to reduce mobility, reduce comfort, reduce consumption, reduce growth. Nobody wants to have less. People want to have better. So you need to show to the people how they can have better in a more efficient and cleaner way. Unfortunately, the technologies exist for that. Today, all the technologies that have to do with efficiency, energy efficiency, waste management, circular economy, renewable energies, all this is today more profitable than the old ways of doing. So we have a new paradigm that is very encouraging. It is more profitable and it creates more jobs to protect the environment than to destroy the environment. And this can be seen in all the infrastructures we have in terms of water, energy, infrastructures, mobility, agriculture, industry. If we use the new modern systems today in order to replace the old, outdated and polluting systems we had before, and we replace them by clean and efficient ones, it is the market of the century. The market of the century. You create jobs, you make profit, and you have clean and efficient infrastructures. And this is where we have to go now.
Wow, yeah. And I think it's really amazing to see people like Elon Musk doing that, trying to make a clean sort of transportation and with a viable financial motive. I think that will create lots of jobs in the future for sure. So through air, land, or sea, sustainable or what is called green transport has always been led by innovation. How much emphasis do you place on this important catalyst, and how adaptive are you to the rapid changes in tech and the advent of disruptive solutions?
You have, I believe, two ways to follow. One is in the procedures, in the operations. If you have a ship that goes 20% slower, you save 34% of the fuel and gas emissions. Yeah. So it's worth it. It's worth it. And it's even cheaper if the ship cruises a little bit slower. For the airplanes, if you have an approach with a constant descent, you save, for example, for a jumbo jet, you save 1 ton of kerosene for every landing. So it's relevant. If you have direct routes, you save also a lot of energy. So in the operations, you can do a lot. Now, there is another thing, of course, it's the implementation of the new technologies. On an airplane today, the Airbus Neo is 25% more efficient in terms of fuel than the previous models. So it's clear that today, when we have a need to support the airlines because they are in an economic crisis because of the COVID-19, it's clear that we should not encourage the airlines to continue with the old airplanes that are polluting. You need to help them to modernize their fleets. The same for buildings. You know, this is not mobility, but it's about 40% of the energy of the planet. It's the buildings. The way you build a house or a skyscraper, it's the same. You can build it with very good insulation, with heat pumps, with LED lamps, and with an ergonomic way to distribute the energy inside the building. And you will be clean and efficient, and you will save money. Or you can make buildings that are badly insulated with oil heatings or electric heaters that are not as good as heat pumps. And it will cost you a fortune to heat your building. And at the same time, it will pollute the environment and it will waste a lot of resources. So we have to be logical as much as ecological. And this is, I believe, a way to motivate the industry to follow. Because we should not attack the industry. We should never attack the oil producers or the car producers or whoever. We have to help them to diversify, to be cleaner, to be more efficient, thanks to all the new technologies that exist.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, speaking of ecology, we have to be logical and ecological. You are one of the first to envision ecology through the lens of profitability, to tackle climate change and gain popular endorsement across communities and nations. Tell us about this approach and how successful it has been so far.
This is coming from my experience as a medical doctor and a psychiatrist, more than my career as an explorer. As a psychiatrist, I know that you have to learn to speak the language of the people you want to convince. So if you arrive to the head of a big corporation, and the guy has to pay 50,000 salaries at the end of the month, every month, and money to the shareholders, and you tell him you have to change everything because you have to protect the environment, he will tell you, even if I wish, I could not do it. So you have to speak his language. How can you be more profitable? How can you be more efficient? How can you save resources? How can you increase your margin? How can you create more jobs and at the same time protect the environment? And I believe this was missing for a long time. There were the green activists who were attacking the industry, and the industry had to defend itself. Today, we have to speak the language of the industry and show how the industry can do better. And I've written an op-ed last week with 12 CEOs or chairmen of big companies like Nestle, like BNP Paribas, LVMH, and companies like this, very high level. And they are committing officially in writing to be more sustainable, to go into new technologies, and even to ask governments to introduce more ambitious environmental policies in order to oblige everybody to go into that direction. So it is promising. The problem is that there are a lot of people who are still far behind, and they are resisting to the change. And these people have to be pushed into the change, otherwise the world will never be better.
Okay. And you see policy as a good way to do that, government policies. Yeah. Okay, awesome. I think you're right. The transition needs to be there, and we need to work together instead of against each other towards achieving a future where all humans can live in, a cleaner environment and a better earth. So
exactly. Yeah. This is why. This is how we contribute to the Solar Impulse Foundation, and the Zayed Prize is of the same wavelength. We are trying to identify, select, and label the technologies or products or processes or systems or devices that protect the environment in a financially profitable way. And on the Solar Impulse Foundation, we put the label, Solar Impulse Efficient Solution label, in order to bring them as tools to big corporations or governments and show them how they can reach more environmental targets and energy policies with more ambition. And the Zayed Prize is doing a great job because it's also a way to bring together the innovators who have good ideas, good products, good projects, and make them known. Because if the world doesn't know all these solutions, nothing will change.
Yes. And ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Piccard does amazing work. He's working with the Zayed Sustainability Prize. He's twice the legend. And in addition to Solar Impact Foundation, you're also the founder of Winds of Hope, the organization that combats neglected diseases in children and a goodwill ambassador to the United Nations Population Fund. Tell us about your role and reach in these two important roles on the international stage.
I was helped by my fame as an explorer. When you go around the world in a balloon non-stop, when you go around the world in a solar-powered airplane, you attract the imagination of the people. They are fascinated by these type of things because they say, oh, we did not know it was possible, and somebody did it. So I was always considering the goal not to be the success in itself, but to use the success in order to reach the international community, the United Nations, governments, heads of states. And very often they're interested to speak to me about my achievements. But this is the 10 first seconds of the discussion. And then I come with the questions of sustainability, of clean technologies, of renewable energies, and really try to show them that the next step for me as an explorer is not just to go around the world with clean technologies. My goal is to put these clean technologies on the market, to help the startups, to help a lot of companies who have interesting solutions, to make them better known, and to have their products being used, implemented, to have a much cleaner world. So all this goes together, and it makes it really challenging, but it's very, very interesting also to see the reaction between those who say climate change does not exist. And I say, even if climate change did not exist, even without climate change, all the new clean technologies, they make sense because they are cheaper than the old technologies. The clean technologies are cheaper than the dirty technologies, so you can use them, even if you don't care about the environment. And sometimes you have governments who are really interested by it. And for example, I've been nominated as a special advisor to the European Commission in order to be able to bring solutions into the European policy. So it's fascinating. And this allows me to say to all the people who are listening to us, if you have this type of solutions that protect the environment in a financially profitable way, you can submit them to the Solar Impulse Foundation. It's solarimpulse.com. and you can get the label Solar Impulse Efficient Solution and be promoted. So all the people who apply for the Zayed Prize can have the label. It's for free because we are non-for-profit. So it's a really good match between the Zayed Prize and the Solar Impulse Foundation label.
Wow, Mr. Piccard, I mean, it's just really interesting, kind of the different levels that you're playing at on the international stage, you know, and also being an advocate for sustainability in a way that's super important and bringing issues to the table in front of world leaders. Because the biggest issue, I think, even for young people, is how do we get our words or what our ideas are out into the global stage? And I think that, you know, working with Solar Impulse is a really good way to kind of showcase if you have an innovation that makes sense and is sustainable, then you can actually use the platform that you have developed for young people to then reach world leaders. I think that's super amazing. So something maybe our audience, sorry to interrupt, go on.
Yeah, and the young people have more power than they think. You know, when there were all the young children walking in the street in favor of fighting climate change,
yes,
it was very, very impactful. The government, most of the time, took it very seriously because they thought, wow, these people are the young electors for us. And if they fight us, we're not going to be re-elected. And a lot of regions or cities or even countries have declared a climate emergency because the young children were in the street. So we have to consider really expressing, speak loud about our convictions. Yes. Otherwise, nothing will change.
I love that.
But in a positive way. It's also ridiculous to say, we have to do that, we should not do that. This is wishful thinking. Instead of denouncing the problems, you have to bring the solutions.
Yeah, okay. Speak loud about your convictions in a positive way, ladies and gentlemen. So, Dr. Piccard, in your role also as a selection committee member of the Zayed Sustainability Prize Energy category, you have seen many projects led by many SMEs and non-for-profit organizations. To help encourage potential candidates watching today's show, can you provide us with some examples of these types of projects you have found most impressive in recent years and which are likely to earn a high score ahead of the 2021 awards?
Well, there is so many interesting innovations. And I tell you, I was several times at the Sustainability Week in Abu Dhabi, in the big audience where we have 2,000 people, high dignitaries, yes, sheikhs, politicians, United Nations Secretary General, Prime Minister of China, you know, and the prize is announced. The winner goes on stage, and young people, very often, with an innovation that they have just invented. And it shows such a beautiful example to all the dignitaries who are there, because these prize winners show a solution and it can be implemented, because the Zayed Prize is also a lot of money to support the innovator to develop the project. So I remember when I was there in 2015 for the start of the round the world adventure with Solar Impulse, starting from Abu Dhabi. A few weeks before, there was the Zayed Prize, and the winner is a small organization who has developed solar lights that could be distributed in all the schools in Africa. And so, of course, we became friends together because he was having the solar power to light the lamps in Africa, and we were using the solar power to fly around the world with a solar powered airplane. We were really on the same admiration for solar energy. We can do so much with it. Yeah. And you know, there is also something interesting at the Abu Dhabi Sustainable Week. It's the clicks movement. All these startups are also bringing interesting innovations, and one of them I was fascinated with is like a powder that you put in the ground, in the soil, when you are cultivating the seeds, and it captures the humidity, the moisture. So you don't need to put so much water. It just keeps the moisture. It becomes a gel, And without spreading more water, you have the plant that is growing. Wow. And if you can do that in dry places like Abu Dhabi, of course, it's very promising.
Yeah, definitely. There are lots of different innovations happening there. And it would be very good for audience members to just apply and also take part in being such an environment where they can be challenged and be with some of their peers around the world.
Exactly.
So my last question for you.
Abu Dhabi is showing a great example with Masdar. Masdar is the organization that hosted us with Solar Impulse, with Sultan Al-Jaber, who is the chairman of Masdar. And it's wonderful to see in an oil-producing country the importance, the emphasis that is put on the diversification in renewable energy and clean technologies. It's a beautiful example.
That's true. That's very true. Mazda is doing an amazing job. So my last question for you before we go into the audience questions is, during this year's Earth Day, you highlighted the need to avoid letting the environmental movement take a backseat as the world focuses on the COVID-19 pandemic. Tell us about your view on this, as well as the post-virus economy.
Yes. Before the virus crisis, what did we have? We had a society, human society, that was fragile, unstable, at the edge of a recession, polluting, depleting natural resources, and bringing inequalities around the world. Is it this type of world that we want to recover? I hope not. Because the world today can be fair, can be sustainable, can be efficient, can be more profitable. We can bring on the market environmentally friendly products that the consumer will buy. So we have, I would say, a consumption of a quality instead of a quantity. We can bring to people what they need to protect the environment, and this will make money everywhere. So when we see the trillions of dollars and euros that are spread on the market to help the economy to recover, we should put conditions for this money to be given. And the conditions should be environmental. It should be energy efficiency. It should be about waste management. Don't give money to a company that is using this money to produce more waste that are thrown into the ocean. Give them the money to pay the salaries, to recover from the crisis, but at the condition that they deal with their waste in a way to produce energy with the waste, or to recycle the waste, or to give them a second life, for example. If the real estate business is in trouble, we can support them, of course, not leave everybody be unemployed. But if you help the real estate business, it should be to build buildings that are so well insulated that they don't need fossil energy to be heated, for example. And all this is possible. So we have to help the economy to recover, but in a way that will be beneficial for the environment. And if we do that, it will create a need for all the new technologies to be pulled on the market, and all the innovators, all the startups, or even the big companies who are providing these products or these technologies, they will make really good business.
Yeah, I agree. If we don't think about what the future is going to look like and go back to the same reality, then we have failed the test, because climate change was the single biggest existential threat to humans before COVID-19, and it's still there. So I think that's very true. We need to think about what it's going to look like in the future after this pandemic hopefully passes. So right into the questions in the audience. So you were born in a family of firsts, with your father and grandfather reaching key milestones in diving and ballooning. How did your background shape your current success, and where did it impact your important work in environmental protection the most?
You know, my father and my grandfather, as great explorers, were always very, very involved in the protection of the environment. Actually, when my grandfather made the first flight in the stratosphere in 1931, one of his two goals was to prove that it was possible to fly above the bad weather in thin air where the fuel consumption would be lower. So his goal was already ecologic. When my father made the dive to the deepest spot in the ocean in the Mariana Trench, his goal was to show that there was life at the bottom of the deepest trenches where a lot of governments wanted to dump their radioactive waste. So I was born into this philosophy that scientific exploration has to be useful for quality of life. So this is what I wanted to reproduce.
And I hope maybe the next generation will also take on another extremely amazing ecological challenge when it comes down to it. The second question that the audience has brought up is, bridging the gap between economy and ecology must be an increasingly difficult challenge in light of the belief that people must make sacrifices in their habits to achieve impactful goals and outcomes. How difficult has it been to engage and motivate governments and individuals to this end?
15 years ago, it was more difficult than today because the profitable technologies did not exist as much. Renewable energy existed, but it was 4 times more expensive than fossil energy. Renovating buildings was much more expensive also, and they didn't have the right material. So I wanted to really prove that it could be profitable, and I worked years for that. And now with the Solar Impulse Foundation Efficient Solution label, we have now today 453 proofs that it can be profitable. 453 solutions that protect the environment in a financially profitable way. So the more and the more the governments understand that it is now finally becoming cheaper to save the environment than to destroy it, then the doors start to open. And there are some regions, some countries even, that ask us for partnerships to the Solar Impulse Foundation in order for them to have access to some advice, tools, solutions that they can implement themselves to stimulate their local economy and also to be more environmental friendly.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a call to all the people watching, that the more you innovate and the more products you create that have a profitable side, then the more the case becomes for renewable energy projects and businesses, and the quicker the transition, because that's how you can actually play your part to encourage a more sustainable world.
Absolutely.
Excuse me. So as an explorer who's lived several weeks of your life alone during a solar balloon expedition, you recently shared your thoughts about leaving your confinement better. As people around the world continue to face lockdowns and social distancing because of the global pandemic, can you share some of these tips with our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. This was very strong for me when I took off with Brightline Orbiter 3 balloon, knowing or hoping we would stay in the air 20 days to be pushed by the wind all around the world. 20 days in a very small capsule. In the beginning, you say, how am I going to cope with that?
Yeah.
It's going to be really long, difficult, maybe boring. You have to change your mindset completely. Instead of projecting yourself to the end of the adventure or to the end of the confinement, if you are confined in a little flat, don't start to count the hours, count the days, because it's going to be a torture. You have to live the present moment and feel that you are alive in your body at every second that you spend. You're alive, you feel that you move, that you think, you are aware of everything around you, and time doesn't count anymore. It's very interesting because you move with time, and suddenly it's finished. Suddenly you land and you get out of the capsule. Suddenly it's the end of the confinement and you can go outside again. Yeah. And you're almost surprised that it's finished because you have not projected yourself in the future. You have just been aware of the present moment. I think that's the very important advice I can give.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'd just like to put in one question. We're a little bit over time, but so Diogo Bernardo, I hope I said that correctly, has a question. So he says, where do you see the future of sustainable transport going, especially with cities like Abu Dhabi, geared towards being a smart and sustainable city? And then Halima asks about where do you see the future of energy storage going? Are open source innovations routes to the answer?
I believe very much in what we call the smart grid. The smart grid is a digitalized system that integrates renewable energies that are intermittent by definition, storage that can be in hydrogen, in batteries, or pumping water in dams or whatever, the transport of the energy, the distribution of energy, the consumption of energy, giving the energy people need at the right moment, but in an efficient way. If you have a smart grid, you can save probably 50% of the energy. And if you have electric motors, for example, you can arrive at 97% of efficiency instead of the 27% of efficiency of a miserable combustion engine. So you see, the future will be electric. Now it can be batteries, it can be hydrogen, but it has to be integrated into a system where, for example, the owner of an electric car is going to use his car when he doesn't drive it to store the energy. And the car will give back the energy on the grid when there is a peak of consumption. So you can be so much more efficient. And it creates a lot of new jobs. The new jobs are the ones who are in energy efficiency, in digitalization of the use and consumption of energy. So we have to be very optimistic when we see the potential of all these technologies. Now, of course, if these technologies are not used because the governments want to, or the corporations want to stick back to the past, then we are lost.
That's true. That's true. Thank you so much, Dr. Bertrand Piccard, for your time, for the amazing legacy that you have left, and for the inspiration you have given to me and the audience members watching today, saying that we need to do our part by coming up with innovations that are profitable and geared towards a beautiful world that we want to live in. So thank you for being with us today. That was Dr. Bertrand Piccard. And I would just like to remind the audience that this is the hashtag Find the Pioneer talk show series. And this is hosted by the Zayed Sustainability Prize. Remember that you can, just like Mr. Piccard said, before it was done, it was impossible. And he asked why, and he did it. And just the same questions you should ask yourself and push yourself to achieve the best of what you want to achieve. So please nominate a pioneer by going to info@zayedsustainabilityprize.com with information about the pioneer. The Zayed Sustainability Prize will reach out to you. And we're looking forward to seeing great innovations from even people in our audience. Please do share this message with people you think that it will be useful for. And thank you. Keep safe until we see each other again. Bye for now.
Bye-bye, and good luck to all the people who are going to participate in the Zayed Prize. It's a wonderful initiative. Good luck. Thank you for the invitation, and all the best.
Bye-bye.